Hey everyone, Corbin Hostler back again this week, and this week we have something a little different for Modern. I tried to hit on the budget theme this week. It's something we've talked about in the past wanting to do, and I did a Dredge Week a couple weeks ago that clocked in at a pretty reasonable price. So this is going much farther in that direction, brewing our own deck up here, and we've actually had some pretty enough success with this deck that I feel okay sharing it here and seeing what people think and where to go with it. Basically, I ran a poll on Twitter that was, what would you rather me brew with for next week, allies or humans? And I think if by a 60 to 40 margin, it was humans that actually won out. I thought maybe it would be allies. I have an ally deck ready to go, but that'll hold off to the future because instead this week we brewed with humans. So the big thing here that makes this possible is the addition of Thalia's Lieutenant and Shadows over Innistrad. It's great. You get to pump up your other creatures, and it gets pumped itself. So the deck started with the Champion of the Parish, which also gets a counter when a human comes into play. Champion of the Parish, Thalia's Lieutenant combo. Of course, your lieutenant, you can play the champion on turn 1, the lieutenant on turn 2, and with both of their triggers, you get to attack with the 3/3 champion of the parish there. Now, I went through a bunch of different iterations with this deck. I tried green-white, I tried blue-white, and while you get good options in each of those, in green you get Dramoka's Command, which is a nice do-it-all sort of spell, but you also get Mare of Avabruck and Hamlet Captain, which pumps your other humans when it attacks. In blue, you get to play Geist of St. Traff, which, while not a human, fits with the deck pretty well. And Laev's Sky Knight, which is a 3-drop that detains, it's a 3-drop 3/1 flyer that detains a non-land permanent of your opponents. And it is a human as well. So you definitely have some options to look at in both, but I ultimately decided on red-white. We're trying to play this aggressive deck because we want to go the champion Thalia's Lieutenant curve here, and of course, it's hard to beat playing with lightning bolts. So here's what we got. A mana base, and this is when you're building budget, the hardest part actually is the mana base. Online, this is all fairly reasonable with the Sacred Foundries, the Rugged Prairies, some basics, the Battlefield Forges. Of course, you'd like to have Arid Mesas, but those, broke the budget a little bit here. We have red-white lands. You get to play the Slayer Stronghold, which can be pretty good here. Then you have sort of the human core of Champion of the Parish, Thalia's Lieutenant, Gather the Townsfolk, which is pretty good. And Kythian is one that fits in there as well. After that, though, that's where it gets a little interesting. We can play a bunch of, Kythians or Soldier of the Pantheons or just sort of 1-drops that are 2 power and just try to be this super aggressive red-white deck. But I didn't think that our deck is very much all in that way, and you only have basically 2 creatures that can even get big in that sense. So we actually opted into the Soul Warden Soul's Attendant build because you get to play the Ajani Pridemates, and this is a little awkward in that it's not a human, but it basically means you have more explosive starts. You can have the Champion Thalia's Lieutenant explosive start, or you can have the Soul Warden into Ajani's Pridemate start. And that, the Pridemate can get very big as well, and all of the Soul Sisters are humans, so they do trigger these other things, and even if you don't have one half of it, you do get to turn your Soul Warden on with a Thalia's Lieutenant into a 2/2, and you can sort of swarm on in there. After that, we have the Grim Lavamancer for the late game value here. It's also a human. The Lightning Bolts, as you'd expect. The Gather the Townsfolk, which is great for getting 2 triggers for your human stuff, or 2 life gain triggers with your Soul's Wardens and stuff to make your Pridemates very big. Lightning Helix not only is great in the meta in general, you get to kill a bunch of things and gain life. It helps with the matchup against the other aggressive decks, but it's also a 9th and 10th card to trigger the Ajani's Pridemate. Moving on to the top end, Thatcher Revolt is actually a really interesting one, and I started this deck with 4 of these, and I've since cut down, but you put 3/1/1 red human creature tokens into play. That is 3 triggers for Champion of the Parish, 3 triggers for Thalia's Lieutenant, 3 triggers for Soul Warden and Ajani's Pridemate, and you have a 6/6 Ajani's Pridemate on turn 3. This card, plus they have haste. It's a great finishing tool. I actually had a game against Red Green Tron in testing where on turn 3 he had a Fire Spout to clear my board. On turn 4, I reloaded with a champion and a Thalia's Lieutenant, and he came back with a Karn on his 4th turn to get rid of one of those. I had double Lightning Bolt, Thatcher's Revolt, and I just bolted him twice at the end of the turn and then hit him with the Thatcher Revolt for 7 along with a 4/4 Champion of the Parish. So, it actually, this gives you a lot of finishing power plus all those triggers. Another one that I actually found in my searching for this, it's been pretty good, is Hero Voxed Ridge. I looked at both this and Hero of Bladehold, the other one for Mirrored and Besieged that has Battle Cry and makes its own tokens. And while that's a better self-contained threat, they're both humans for your triggers. Hero of Oxid Ridge has a lot of things that work for it. You know, the Battle Cry is pretty important when you have, you know, a lot of random 1/1s and stuff like that laying around. All of a sudden it becomes a real threat. Plus this, you know, one of my opponents had 2 spell skites and I just attacked right on through thanks to the second clause on this card. So it really keeps the pressure on. It's a human for all of your triggers. I really like it topping out the deck. Moving on to the sideboard, generic options, you know, as you seem to get in white, which is some of the best sideboarding cards. Rest in peace for the graveyard decks. Stony Silence for Affinity, Tron, and, you know, other things that want to use artifacts. Firewalkers for Burn. Helixes for, you know, more matchups where you want them. And then Crumble to Dust for Tron. So the deck, this is the important part, clocks in at 115 tickets on Magic Online. You know, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is the next big thing in Modern. And, you know, it's a budget deck. It is what it is. But you can definitely take games off of real decks with this, and it's only 115 tickets on Magic Online compared to everything else is, you know, 300 plus. So this is, it makes do with a lot of cards you should already have. You probably have Thalia's Lieutenants floating around from Standard. You know, you probably have Lightning Bolts. Hopefully, if you play any Modern at all, you have Path to Exiles. And then the rest of this stuff, Champion of the Parish, super inexpensive. Hero of Bladehold, Hero of Oxid Ridge, Thatcher Revolt, the Soul Sisters, all of this stuff very inexpensive. It's really the mana base that gets you. And if you're trying to make upgrades to this, the first thing I would do is cut probably the Needle Spires and a couple Plains and play Arid Mesas. But those do sort of take us out of that budget territory where I want to be. But, you know, it's an option. If you have them, it's certainly better. And in paper, this deck clocks in around $275 to $300, and I think that, you know, that's reasonable. And you're more likely, I think, in paper to have some of the lands, and it really is the lands that eat up all that cost because the Arid Mesas are so expensive. You know, remove the Arid Mesas, it gets much more reasonable. Remove the Arid Mesas and the Rugged Prayers, it gets much more reasonable. You know, that's the downside to paper, is that those lands are very expensive. But online, 115 tickets. This is a competitive deck. Let's watch some games.